is chapter 4. And chapter 4 is called Corn, Acorn? Corn and Acorn. Mine's green, I said. Brown ones are better, said Soup. Who says? Me, that's who. How come the brown acorns are better, Soup? Look here, and I'll show you. Taking the green acorn from my hand before my fingers were quite ready to release it, Soup held it up next to his brown one. His acorn was rounder and fatter. The moon on my acorn was still green. The moon on his had mellowed to a rich, creamy, perfectly rounded spot. See, said Soup, brown acorns are ripe, and before it gets real dry, that's the best time to hollow it out for an acorn pipe. Soup had his jackknife, and I had mine. But my first error was clicking out the big blade, a natural mistake that was soon corrected as Soup pointed out that the small blade of a jackknife was specially made to carve out acorns. Lucky for me, our pockets were bumpy with spares, because I ruined the first 3, while Soup only spoiled 1. At last, the delicate surgery was performed. Under Soup's supervision, I even poked a tiny hole up from the point where the pipe stem would fit. Soup, yeah? What do we use for a pipe stem? Blue daisy. Honest? Sure, but it can't be green. There ain't no hole up through the middle of the shaft unless it's brown and dry. It was early October, the peak of the season for carving an acorn pipe, according to Luther Wesley Vinson, whose nickname is Soup. The only available expert. Soup's theory did not concern the acorn. It was because blue daisy weeds bloomed at the start of September. But by October, the shafts were halfway green and partway brown, dry enough to be stiff and straight for a pipe stem, yet green enough to still cut. We located a weed patch that was laced with blue daisy that seemed to Soup and me created special to be stem material for acorn pipes. Each of us cut several stalks of the brownish-green shaft, average lengths, and about 3 inches. With a bit of urging, one end could jam into the hole near the point where the underside of the hollowed-out acorn. Soup? Yeah? We won't ever get any tobacco for our pipes. Don't need it. What'll we use? Corn silk, said Soup. Corn silk? I heard tell that if you smoke corn silk, your teeth turn yellow, and sometimes even your hair. Who said? Raleigh told me, I said.
Raleigh?
What would Raleigh McGraw know about anything? He's so dumb, I bet he goes to school on Saturday. On any given day in Vermont, it doesn't take much brains to find a strand of corn. There was corn on our place, the corn on Vincent's. I still don't know why we bothered to climb the fence into Mr. Tanner's, but we did. Some of the corn was late, and ears stuck out of the pears in almost every other stalk except the runts. Boy, I said, stuffing handful of wet green corn silk into my pocket, there's enough corn silk here to smoke for the next 100 years, maybe even 1,000. Look at it all, Soup. 1,000,000 years at least, said Soup, whose experience in the field of agriculture told him what a bumper season it was for corn silk. Boy, I said again, let me see the silk you're picking. This, I said, showing Soup a handful that was long and green and wet. That'll never smoke, said Soup. Don't you know anything about smoking? For something to burn, it has to be dry. Ever seen tobacco? Sure, lots of times. Well, what color is it? Brown. What color is your corn silk? Green. Look at mine, Rob. I only pick the dark curly silk at the very end of the pick. Pick the stuff that feels so dry it'll almost crackle in your hands. See? I see. Gee, Soup, you must know everything. Yeah, I reckon I do. At least about corn silk.
I think I see where this is going. Since it's all brown like a real pipe, they're going to be like, your boys were smoking. You better give him a good thrashing.
Took me another 5 anxious minutes to void my pockets of wet green corn silk. Some acorns fell out, and I saved those. My next harvest of smoking material was more selective, and I showed Soup some samples. How's this, Soup? Well, okay, it could be better. Some of yours ought to be spread out like a rag under the kitchen stove for an all-night dry. What if Mama or Aunt Carrie finds it? Then it'll smoke for sure. In the stove. And that old biddy of yours will smoke it too. If I got those 2 ladies sized up right. You sized them right, I said, remembering Aunt Carrie's apt description of a scar, a flame in front of a fool in back. Rob, one one of the things you got to learn. What's that? You ought to learn that if you're going to smoke, you got to do it in private. You can't spread out corn silk all over the place for the whole doggone world to take note of it. You can't run home and show people stuff that you like, but they won't even spit on. A while back, I learned something. What? I learned that my ma and pa weren't made to see everything or to know about anything. So I don't talk about a thing. I wouldn't say smoke if I was on fire. One thing I gotta tell you, Rob. Okay, tell me. A shut mouth can bottle up a barrel of sin. Does that sound like a good idea? No. As we both sat and leaned our backs to Mr. Tanner's fence, we stuffed the bowls of our acorn pipes with dry corn silk. It was pure joy to have Soup for a friend. A lot that Soup had said made a heap of sense. He must have been part horse. See how I do it? Said Soup. Let me see. You have to pack just the right dose of silk into your acorn or you won't get enough of a smoke. I know, but there's one mistake a pipe smoker can't make. What's that? You can't punch the silk in too tight. Let's not call it silk, Soup. Say tobacco. Okay, you got to put air down in the bowl as well as tobacco. If there isn't any air, your pipe won't draw. Draw? It won't let you suck any smoke into your lungs. Is that where it goes? That's where. Does this sound smart? No. Filling my acorn to the brim with tinder and oxygen in a full measure, I was now prepared. In my mouth, the blue daisy stem tasted bitter between my teeth. Someday, I thought, our pipes would be real, each briar bowl packed with store-bought blend. Soup struck a match. As he put the flame to the open bowl of my acorn, my face puckered with the power of that first lung-filling puff, breathing in a subtle mixture of dry weeds, oak fruit, corn husk, heat, and sulfur. I had cut the stem a bit too short, and I had to look cross-eyed to watch the small crater that devoured the entire contents of my acorn in one raging draw. Inhale, said Soup, lighting his. I inhaled, and in that one moment of shock, I knew, as my entire soul converted from boy to blast furnace, active juice in my stomach, along with breakfast, surged upward to quench the fire that was now sweeping my respiratory and digestive systems. In all corners of my heart and soul, not to mention eyes, ears, nose, and throat, I knew it.